And we're live.
Yeah. This week in Arsenal, the Gunners trounce Sheffield United 5-0 at home, and then proceed to go out very meekly against West Ham United by a score of 3-1 in the Carabao Cup. Emil Smith Rowe is once again injured as our party and Gabriel Jesus, and the midfield needs some work. Let's get into it. Welcome in to This Week in Arsenal. I believe this is episode 32. Could be 33. I think it's
I think it's a
32.
good sign we are losing count of the episode numbers. We've done quite a bit. That's good.
We've been around for a while. Which is really nice. I feel like podcasts, it's 33. It's episode 33. I feel like
Mhm.
podcasts are like restaurants where people start new ones all the time. They don't last that long. So to be at 33 episodes. Very thankful, and thanks for being here with us. So we come to you after, again, a very disappointing night at West Ham, and you want to try to go far in these competitions, and we failed to do that. So I'm Sham. You can follow me on Twitter at Shamsdale. With me, as always, is Sash, who you can follow on Twitter at LT Arsenal. Sash, how are you feeling about yesterday's result?
Well, I was just discussing with you before the podcast that actually I'm quite relaxed today because the weekend is coming soon. Normally on a Monday, after a bad result, then the week that's ahead. So in this case, when at least I have a Friday to look forward to, so I'm a bit more relaxed. Also, personally, I've never really had a big attachment towards the Carabao Cup. It's always been a competition that I never took seriously, and I think even the Arsenal managers of the past and present don't seem to take it particularly seriously. So I'm not too fussed personally about going out in this competition, but what I'm fussed with is the performance and the mistakes that they made to go out of competition. Now, I think football, you can't win all the games. You look at the teams in the Champions League that are currently there: United out of the Carabao Cup, City out of the Carabao Cup. Newcastle are the only team to go through from the Carabao Cup, but they're not doing so well in the league, and even their Champions League spot looks a bit iffy. So I think balancing three competitions is not something that is that easy, to be honest. And I think all things considered, yeah, sometimes you might lose a game. But again, the manner in which you do it is what for me is really annoying, because if you look at the game, I don't think it was a game that we should have lost. I'll be very honest. Like, I think individual errors and one refereeing error cost us in that match. So it's really frustrating from that point of view. But all in all, it's not like a Premier League match. So I would say that the meltdown that I'm seeing on social media is not something that I personally echo it. But how do you see it, Sham? I know you were quite pissed yesterday. You seemed a bit annoyed with Kai Havertz during the match. How are you feeling today?
I was a little annoyed with Kai. Kai definitely is not the person I was annoyed with the most yesterday. Yeah, I'm disappointed, right? I think, and obviously we'll get onto this later, but I think if you have to pick a competition for us to go out of EFL or Carabao, whatever the hell it's called now, that's the cup that I would pick, right? Gun to
Mhm.
my head, pick something to crash out of. So I don't, like you, I don't really have much of an emotional attachment to it either. I grew up with Arsene Wenger basically taking these games off and just rolling out the kids. So I've never really desperately wanted to win this trophy. But at the same time, I think this performance is very emblematic of how we've looked this season, where we do a lot of good things that I guess correlate with winning matches, but we're not doing a lot of the things that I think are indicative of actual good football, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, we are getting hit on the counter still. We're making bad mistakes in possession. We're just depending way too heavily on going out wide and cutting and doing cutbacks from the byline. No
Mhm.
central progression at all. We don't seem to have a functional eight at the moment. We're playing a bunch of guys at the eight position who don't seem cut out for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm worried about. That's what I'm concerned about. So yeah, if you're gonna play that badly, do it in the FL Cup. But I'm up to like a 4 out of 10 in terms of my concern level.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you on in terms of the concern level, and we'll get a bit more into the performance as we go on the podcast. Obviously, there were certain individuals that were really annoying, but having said all of that, I think personally the first half I thought we played quite well. I thought Arsenal started the game decently. Look, West Ham played, I think, almost the full strength team. I think they had probably, I don't know, 7 to 8 or 9 first teamers playing, and it's a game in their home ground. Their fans are really up for it, obviously, because Declan Rice is coming back. So everyone's up for it. And I think all things considered, Arsenal in that first half played quite well. Like, I don't think we created a huge chance where, like, oh my God, that's a sitter, but we also didn't concede a single shot. And I saw on half time that West Ham were 1-0 up with zero shots, zero XG. And I was thinking that this sort of result, there's only one team that can be on the end of something like this, and it's Arsenal, right? And even at halftime, I saw a lot of people melting down, but I was like, let's calm down for a second. We've conceded off an own goal. In that goal, in my opinion, Ben White was obviously he headed the ball in the back of his own net, but Ramsdale was fouled quite clearly, I thought, by a West Ham player. I can't remember who it was, but he was being pulled. And with VAR, that goal probably isn't given. So I think the way that goal unfolded was really unfortunate. Um, and yeah, sometimes that can happen. And we found ourselves in the most freakish situation, being 1-0 down at halftime. Do you agree with that, Sham? What did you make of the first half? Did you also see it as a decent performance at a tough away ground, or did you see some concerns that were there in the first half itself?
No, I think in the first half we did fine, right? I agree pretty much with everything you said there, where we were very much in control throughout the match. I think at one point we had 85% possession. I think we entered halftime with like 68
Yeah.
or around there. And yeah, West Ham had no shots. An XG of 0.00, had an own goal. Suchek was holding Ramsdale, and continued to hold Ramsdale. By the way, there was a second or third corner that they took where Ramsdale had enough at one point and shoved Suchek off him, and the
Yeah.
referee had to come get involved.
Yeah.
Knowing our luck with referees, I'm honestly surprised West Ham didn't get a penalty for that. But yeah, that goal should have been ruled out. I think we didn't deserve to be 1-0 down going into halftime. It's the second half performance, I think. That's the real downer on the night. But I think in the first half it was a pretty standard 23-24 Arsenal performance where they're controlling most aspects of the match, they're dominating possession, but um when all was said and done, there were only really a couple moments where we looked particularly threatening.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. I mean, I would agree with that. I thought some performances divided opinions at halftime. So I thought Trossard was really poor in that first half. Some will say that he was getting double teamed by West Ham players, which is true. Maybe it's the system that put him in that position. So that could also partly be the blame. But I thought Trossard was quite poor by his standards in that first half. And I thought Kai Havertz was quite good in that first half. Maybe saying superb was an exaggeration on my part in hindsight. But I thought Kai Havertz played quite well in the first half. He put himself about. He seemed to be expressing himself and playing with more confidence. It didn't come off for him in the final third, but I thought there's quite some encouragement from him up to like that point. And maybe if Arsenal were ahead, fans might see it differently. But since we were 1-0 down, it seems like you cannot praise any player. I also thought Reece Nelson played quite good in that first half, dribbling wise. Again, got into some good positions, didn't make it count. So the first half I thought did have some decent performances. Jorginho I thought was decent as well in first half, as was Kiwior. So I thought in the second half going into it that we should just continue the way we are. We obviously have the likes of Saka, Martinelli, Odegaard on the bench for a reason, and it's if we need them, they would come on and help us over the line. Obviously, that was not the case as we started the second half in absolutely catastrophic fashion. Now, there were two mistakes made in the second half. One, you can say, the goal that Kudus scored was a he takes the ball really well, but Sham Zinchenko should really be doing much better there, shouldn't he? And maybe partly Gabriel as well. But for me, again, I hate to go on banging this drum, but Zinchenko against any decent winger, it's never going to end well. And
Yeah.
people are seeing it now. People said I have an agenda on Zinchenko. How can you criticize him? He played a huge role in a team that had 84 points last season. I buy that. But I'm telling you, if we want to go to the next level, he cannot be the guy that's doing the defending on that flank. It didn't cost us in yesterday's match. It would have costed us in another game. It's cost us in the past, and it will cost us in the future. And Sham, you made a really good point after the Chelsea game about not pairing Zinchenko and Jorginho together. And Arteta has gone and done that, and it's again cost us. I just want to get your thoughts on this Zinchenko conundrum and the mistake that we made as a team for that goal.
I was so nervous when the lineup came out and Zinchenko and Jorginho were both on there because like we said last time, each of them on their own are very talented players in possession.
Yeah.
Zinchenko is one of the most technically gifted players I've ever seen. Jorginho is your very classic deep lying string puller, right? And so those two guys are really great on the ball. If you are playing against low blocks, if you expect to have a lot of the possession, if you know you're going to control the game, those two guys are great for it, right? But the problem with playing those two together is that neither of them are athletic. Neither of them are particularly physically gifted. They're not fast. They're not dynamic. They're not strong. So when you do a double pivot of those guys in midfield as your line of defense before the defense, they're leaves in the wind, basically. And it's just really frustrating because even back when we were starting Party and Zinchenko, right? We had this problem on the right hand side a lot at the back end of last season, where teams started picking up on the fact that a Zinchenko vacates that area a lot, and b Zinchenko's not really a 1v1 defender to begin with. So I was again nervous knowing that Kudus was on the field, knowing that Bowen was on the field. Those are guys who can take advantage of Zinchenko's inadequacies there. So when Mohamed Kudus got the ball on that on the left side of our defense, yes, I think Gabriel should have gotten there a little bit quicker, right? But also Zinchenko should have been there too. You should have had Zinchenko and Gabriel collapsing in on him. The first time I saw that goal, I said, I went out and tweeted, "I'm not mad. That's a fabulous bit of play." And then I watched the replay, and I was mad because we gave Kudus so much time to bring that ball down and then have the shot. And that's just unacceptable. So I think it's very telling that Arteta's first substitution was to take Zinchenko off and put on Tomiyasu. I think it's also telling that Tomiyasu didn't start this game because I think a year ago this is exactly the kind of game that Tomiyasu would have started in. And that tells me that Arteta is very conscious of this issue and had one eye on Newcastle for starting Tomiyasu there. So I think we're hitting a point where Takahiro Tomiyasu is probably our best option at left back. Obviously, he's not Zinchenko on the ball, but I think he gives you enough of that while also being extremely sound defensively that it's worth it at the end of the day. And we're going to be playing in these matches and we're going to have teams coming at us like West Ham did with pace, with physicality, with dynamism, and Zinchenko can't handle that. So, yeah, I don't think it's looking good for him long term.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what the point you make, ties into like a bigger point, or rather a bigger problem. You made the point that right now Tomiyasu is super important. But in a parallel universe where Jurian Timber is fit and available, in a game like this, Tomiyasu plays, and I think we are of course going to discuss about our exit from the later on. But I think personally that one injury can have this trickle down effect on other players as well. And like you mentioned, maybe Zinchenko individually as a player, he has some flaws which could be minimized if he has a certain profile of player next to him. Now, I still think that you cannot prevent Zinchenko from defending 1v1. There will always be situations in games where he has to defend 1v1. And you saw Liverpool at Anfield. Thomas Partey played that game, but Zinchenko still has to defend against Trent 1v1. And the rest is history. So you can't prevent it, but I agree with you that you can minimize it. But then, Sham, again, I want to ask you at some point, right? Like, who is to blame for this? Because you saw even for the third goal, another individual error which Ramsdale made, which should be saved. But I don't want to get into that debate because I think that's totally like we're past that now. I don't think that that's a debate that we should involve ourselves in right now. It's an error. But I want to ask you, Sham, we make so many mistakes. Why and who is to blame for that? Like, I don't get like Zinchenko, you can say is a bad player defensively, but then do you think Arteta is to blame for picking Zinchenko, or do you think he should have taken the risk and played Tomiyasu even though we need him for the same issue? Like, what did you make firstly about the manner in which we conceded those two goals? Because I think that for me is the hardest pill to swallow.
Yeah, I I think my rule is that if a player makes a mistake a few times, right, that's on the player. And then if that player makes the same mistake over and over and over to the point where it starts to become part of their identity, part of their game, that's on the manager. If they keep playing that guy in situations where it's not, beneficial or helpful for them. So in this instance, I think it's on Arteta, right? And I mentioned this in the winners and losers video that's up on the channel now, where I said that you can't play Jorginho and Zinchenko together, and this is something that Arteta should be aware of at this point, right? If I can see it, surely he can see it. And
Mm,
yeah, I think these mistakes lie on Arteta. I do think, when we're talking about build up and some of the issues that we had playing out from the back, I think a lot of that's just on the players
yep.
because all those guys can pass the ball, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, we're not talking about Holding and Socrates trying to pass the ball out now. Where these are almost playmakers on the ball. So yeah, I think the blame goes around here, but in the particular case of Jorginho playing alongside Zinchenko, I think that's something that you can squarely lay the blame for at Arteta's feet.
Yep, yeah, for sure. And I think that's the thing here because beyond the point, I don't want to go on about Zinchenko either. I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I think at some point you have to blame the person that's picking him, and I think at some point you have to blame Arteta for not like thinking this through, especially a few weeks ago when against Chelsea we had the same issue. So hopefully now we will learn. I think Arteta said himself in the press conference that he's the first one that would blame himself for what happened, and yeah, I think it calls for reflection. But speaking of
I,
reflection, yeah,
I'm just going to add that I think I would be shocked if Zinchenko started at Newcastle, and that for me is going to be a sign that Zinchenko has fallen down the pecking order.
yep, absolutely. I don't think he's as indispensable as he used to be. I've said this, he never started more than 15 games in a season for Man City. Why is it that fans want him to play 30, 35 games for Arsenal? Like, I don't get it. Like, based on what has he shown that he can play 38 games and win like the title? Like, I don't see him as that sort of player. And I think Arteta has realized that as well. Like, you saw against Sheffield at home, he had his use. I thought he was really good in that match, and certain games suit him. But I would say about 70% of the games don't suit him. And yeah, it's good that we now have that solution in Tomiyasu, and hopefully we manage to rotate and hopefully they manage to stay fit. But again, coming to another issue, which I thought has been a big issue for the whole of the season, it's the midfield. And once again, yesterday we saw the same thing that we've been seeing from the start of the season. I honestly thought Arteta had turned a corner with his midfield selections. So Community Shield, he starts off, he plays Party, Rice, Odegaard. I like that. We played quite well against a Man City side that's really good. Um, and we managed to draw the game and we go on and win the penalty shootout. I was really happy with the way we played in that match. The midfield was stable. It was not breaking lines constantly or flashy like we were last season, but good structure, solid. Then the Premier League starts. Arteta suddenly moves Thomas Partey to inverted right back. He then plays Declan Rice, Havertz, and Odegaard, and that midfield three for me never clicked at all. We were suffering a lot in the initial games, and Kai Havertz especially was struggling in that LCM spot, in which, by the way, a lot of other midfielders have also struggled for Arsenal. He gets hooked off a few matches, and then Fabio Vieira comes and does really well in that ref central midfield spot, playing with Martinelli. But then Martinelli gets injured at Goodison Park, and suddenly Fabio Vieira does not have that runner to play with on that left hand side. We play Trossard, and playing Trossard and Vieira together in that side does not work. So once again, Arteta reverts back to playing Kai Havertz there. But after an indifferent game against Tottenham, once he comes on, Arteta again decides to change things. We then start to play Jorginho, Rice, and Odegaard, and I felt that had a good balance to it. But then, as you said, when you play Jorginho, you don't want to play Zinchenko. So I just think a whole team is this interconnected set of problems, personally, which like it's not so straightforward to solve.
Yeah.
And I think at the crux of it is the midfield because last season we used to have a standard midfield: Granit Xhaka, Thomas Partey, Martin Odegaard. Then you make the changes elsewhere, but this midfield three was set. I think right now Declan Rice has been phenomenal. Honestly, like incredible signing. One day he's playing six, one day he's playing eight, and no matter where he plays, he's giving us at least a 7.5 to 8 out of 10, which is really good consistency week in, week out. But it's the others around him. I think Martin Odegaard has not been the same player this season, but I don't think that's because Odegaard became a average player overnight. I just think he is a victim of the broader midfield issues, right? I was speaking the other day, not speaking, but rather uh, AI, who you know on Twitter, he left a comment that no, Martin Odegaard and Saka, they're touching the ball quite a lot. They're touching the ball as much as they did last season. You cannot say that Odegaard is not getting the ball. But for me, it's not about Odegaard having that many touches. It's about where you're playing the ball to Odegaard, right? You want to break the lines and you want him to receive the ball in space. You want him to receive, turn, and then go. That's when he's at his best. You can't play the ball to him when the opponent has already organized itself. He needs to receive the ball in between the lines, and that pass is not coming. Okay. And I think partly that's down to Thomas Partey's injury. Now, I'm not saying Declan Rice is not a progressive passer. I think he's shown on multiple occasions that he can break the lines. But let's just say he's not as vertical as Thomas Partey is with his passing. I don't believe that this is a bad thing necessarily because I think we need a midfielder at six who can control the game better. But I also think the left central midfield spot, people have this notion that Granit Xhaka was just standing near the goal and poaching. But no, he did so much more than that. And Odegaard was getting balls played into him from both Xhaka and Thomas Partey. And hence why, in my opinion, we need that left eight who can be a playmaker. I want someone like Frankie de Jong, who can receive the ball, turn, and slip players in between the lines as well as turn away from a press. We need someone like this who can, pick the ball out and build up and help us, but also offer some final third threat when they have to. And I think this is where the transfer committee made a huge goof up because this was the summer we were supposed to do it. Now we signed Kai Havertz, and I don't believe personally that Kai Havertz was brought in to play that role only. I think Arteta bought Havertz because Arsenal don't have any players of that profile, of that Muller profile, second striker who can play. But I think the plan from the club was to move on from Thomas Partey. It didn't happen. Thomas Partey is injured, and again, we find ourselves in this mess. So, Sham, I want to firstly ask you your thoughts. I think this is the weekly topic now on This Week in Arsenal, the midfield. I want to ask you, what is the solution to our midfield? Like, I know at the moment you will say Jorginho, Odegaard, Rice for now, right? But as you also mentioned, Zinchenko cannot play then. But I just want to know how you would rotate the midfield going into January, because I think in January, signing a midfielder is of paramount importance ahead of any other position personally. Like, how do you see it?
Yeah, it's really tricky because I think, there's a lot of people saying that we should sell Party in January, and I don't think that's a great idea at all because the way this midfield is configured, we still need him, right? And I think we need to think back to why our midfield three was so good last season, right? Which is we had Party, who was, while not that great of a defensive player, I think he was solid, right? But he's not Declan Rice defensively.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Party's superpower was his vertical passing and his ability to get the ball with his back to goal, turn and move it up the pitch, whether that was through carrying or through passing. He was a master of those around the corner passes off the tip of his boot to Odegaard. He
Yeah.
was good at getting the ball and then stepping through opposition players into space.
Mhm.
So Declan Rice can't do that as of yet. I'm not sure that's his profile. But on top of that,
Sorry sorry to cut you off there. I think Declan Rice can do it, but not with the same level of consistency as Thomas Partey. That's what I would say personally.
yeah, and I always think back to when we had Freddie Paxton on the pod and we were talking about this, and Freddie was insistent that Rice is a better progressive passer than a lot of people think, and I tend to agree with that now, right?
Hmm.
But he's not at this elite level in that category yet, and we had Party who's doing this, and we had Xhaka who was functioning as a proper two-way eight. And I think
Yep.
that's really the problem, right? Because you had Party who was progressing the ball from the sixth position. You had Xhaka who was doing the job of an eight and, getting forward, but also being there because remember, he had Party on his right and Zinchenko on his left. There was a lot of defensive work to do there, right?
True.
So he was getting back and he was doing the dirty work. And I think that left Odegaard to play more as an 8-10 hybrid,
Hmm.
right? And get the ball and combine with Saka and White in that right half space and focus more on goal creation. But now we don't have a Xhaka, right? So I feel like what's happened instead, I feel like we've tried to shoehorn Rice into the Party role and Havertz
Hmm.
into the Xhaka role, and they're just not doing what those two are able to do last year. And I think that's also messing up the dynamics for Odegaard, right?
Yep.
Because Odegaard's trying to do the same thing that he did last season. That's not coming off. He's not getting found. He's losing the ball a lot more often. Um, yeah, so I think the dynamics of the midfield are all messed up at this point, and unfortunately, I'm not sure how you fix it at this point in time because Party just this might be his worst season yet in terms of his lack of availability, and then Smith Rowe, who I like, some friends of the pod like as well in terms of a solution to our central progression problem,
Hmm.
also can't stay fit. And then we went and signed Kai Havertz, who he's not a midfielder in my mind, and we signed him to be a second striker, but we don't have that other backboard big man striker for him to play off of as of yet. So we're trying to play Havertz in a role that he can't really perform at a high level. And then, Fabio Vieira, I think you need a lot of defensive structure behind him to make him viable.
Hmm.
And so it's tricky. And then, Trossard, I don't think is a complete solution. And yeah, it's just I feel like we don't really have that profile in the team right now. And the players who at least make a functional midfield
Hmm.
are constantly injured.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, for me, it it's a tough pill to swallow because you'd like to think that we're a striker away from really being at City's level, but
Yeah.
I think we need. I think at this point in time we might need a center back to back up Saliba,
Yeah.
and I think we actually need a proper 8, and then we need the striker
And a
on top of
winger
that.
for
So
Saka as well.
yeah, yeah. Um, so I mean, we'll see what we do in January. I do think even despite concerns about the budget, I think we need to go and make something happen. And if that does require the sale of of a Smith Rowe, of a Ramsdale, then I think you got to try and make that happen.
Yep. I think personally that Ramsdale is going to leave at the end of the season. Like, I don't see any other way totally back from him now unless David Raya has howler after howler, because Ramsdale's mistake yesterday was really poor. And I think when you get one chance like Ramsdale does, you need to really play incredibly well to try to force your way back in. And we didn't see that from him. So I think even maybe from his point of view, the easiest thing would be to leave, because I'm sure Chelsea would be interested. I'm sure a lot of top teams would be in for him because he's a really good goalkeeper. It's just that Arsenal decided to sign David Raya, decided that he's the number one, at least for now. And that immediately makes Ramsdale a sellable asset. And even from his point of view, I think he would definitely be looking forward to exploring some options. So that's one to keep an eye on. We're seeing rumors about Chelsea today from some reliable outlets as well. So let's see how that transpires. But even Smith Rowe, like, I think he was on the verge of leaving, not on the verge, but somewhat close to leaving in the summer towards the end, but it didn't happen. Arteta wanted to keep him, but again, Arteta doesn't like players that get injured. You can see it with Tierney. I think the club also wanted to sell Partey in the summer, but it didn't happen. So I think the first thing about a footballer is reliability, and that's why I miss Sir Granit Xhaka so much, because he was always
Yeah.
available, would play every competition. And yeah, I think, like, honestly, I know we sold him for 20 million, which might sound decent for a player in his age, but I think he was worth a lot more to us than that. And obviously, his wife wanted to be closer to her home, and Shaka also, I think, wanted to leave. So I understand that. But again, it's quite disappointing that we lost a player that good, and didn't manage to replace. But in general, I agree with your points. And I would also just like to add that I think one potential solution could be to play Odegaard LCM at the moment. So the way I see it, right, is that in the left hand side, you have a runner in Martinelli. On the right hand
Mhm.
side, you have more of a creative profile in Saka. I think if you put Odegaard on the left, it ties in quite well with Martinelli, who likes to go off the ball. Odegaard likes to receive the ball and play that pass. On the right central midfield spot, I would play Declan Rice personally, um, because I think he has more of that box to box traits. He's able to go up and down the pitch. And I think with Saka, who again likes to receive ball to feet, he can also make good off the ball runs, Saka, but predominantly I think he's really good when he receives the ball like to his feet. I think Rice giving him that overlap option, I think the dynamics would work quite well. But we're yet to see Arteta trying something different, and that's what frustrates me, because even after learning something, he reverted back to type again yesterday, which for me was quite annoying. And hopefully, sometimes you need to swallow a bitter pill to actually recognize a mistake and correct it going forward. So hopefully, we'll see a different approach against Newcastle. But yeah, the midfield definitely big concern for me. And unless we fix it in January, I don't see us winning the league, Sham. I cannot see us winning the league without that position. Like right now, we're winning the games, we're playing well, but we're showing too much character for my liking at times. It has to be easier than this. So yeah, fingers crossed we solve this.
You know what I would do right now is I think I would stick with Rice at 6, I would stick with Odegaard at 8. But and again, this is where balance of profiles really
Please don't
matters.
say Zinchenko.
No, 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 no. I bear with me. So Odegaard at 8, right 8,
Yeah.
Party. Sorry, not Party. Rice at 6, and then at left back, I would play Tomiyasu, right?
Mhm.
And then I think at that point, I would feel comfortable playing Fabio Vieira
Ah,
as the
okay.
left 8.
Yeah.
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 And then Martinelli, left wing, Saka, right wing. And I think I would go with Havertz at center forward, right?
Love it. Yeah.
So now you have a runner at left wing. You've got a target man at center forward. You've got Saka, who's a creative profile. And, you've got the overlap from White, and you've got Odegaard there as well. But I think that really works for Vieira because not
Mhm.
only does he have the runner in Martinelli, a guy he has a lot of chemistry with, but
Yeah.
also he has someone like Havertz who he can play off of a little bit. And, I just think that opens things up a little bit more for Odegaard to maybe be more of the second phase controller that he was last season.
Yeah.
That's personally what I would do. And again, I trust Rice and Tomiyasu to make up for some of the defensive frailties that
Yeah.
Vieira has. But yeah, I mean, I don't think that's a title winning solution, but I think that at least gets us by until Party comes back.
Yep. Yep. I totally agree. And I think, but if I look at Thomas Partey, Rice, Odegaard, if I look at that midfield three, I think, yeah, that team can go all the way. But, I'm just totally fed up with Thomas Partey, like relying on him for his
Yeah.
fitness. I remember you even texted me saying that you were really pissed off with Thomas Partey for his fitness. Uh, and yeah, I mean, I cannot put another season with him, man. Like, can you imagine we're first until March and April he gets injured like always? Like, we cannot do it. Like, it's
This needs to be his last season at
yeah,
Arsenal. I think he's proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that he's not a reliable player. And also the guy's gonna be 31 next
yeah,
summer. So,
yeah,
if this is what his body is doing now, right, in his late 20s, what do you think he's gonna be doing in his early to mid 30s? The guy's not gonna step on the pitch more than 10, 15 times
yeah.
a season on average.
It's actually crazy because at the start of the season, he comes in, he plays as the right back. I was very worried. I was like, Mikel, why the hell are you putting him at right back, making him chase Eze and players like this? And immediately he pulls his hamstring. And then he comes back and then he plays like 2 minutes or something against Man City, again gets injured. No, he got injured again after the Palace. He comes back, gets injured, then comes back, plays 2 minutes against, not 2 minutes, but like 15 minutes against Man City, gets injured. And then, yeah, it's like, I don't get it. Like, it's crazy how easily this guy can get injured on his, like, when he's fit. He's one of the best midfielders in the world in that position, no doubt about it. But reliability is everything. You cannot have a guy playing 20 or 25 league games a season, um, and it's very hard to plan. You want to have a starting 11, you want to have a set way of playing, and when one guy is at the fulcrum of your team is that injury prone, it's really hard. And Man City, you can see what happens when Rodri is taken off the team. I think they lost 2 or 3 games in a row, so that position is so important. And you mentioned let's play Declan Rice there, and it shows you how good Declan Rice is as well, because he's never played that role in his career. He's come in and he's really just played it from scratch, and he's not perfect at that role yet. But yeah, I think what he's done is immense. And if there's anything that fills me with some comfort, it's his presence in the middle of midfield. So yeah, let's fingers crossed we solve this soon, starting with this weekend, and we keep our players fit. I think that's the most important thing here. But now coming to the players, the fringe players who played this match, you had Reese Nelson, you had Eddie, you had Kai Havertz, you had Trossard, you had Jorginho, my beautiful internet to play tricks. Apologies for
There
that.
you are.
Yeah, apologies for that. So we had a number of fringe players playing, but did anyone catch your eye? Did anyone you think make a name for themselves or stake a claim that, hey, Mikel, did you see how I played? You need to consider me. Were there any such performances?
I think there were two. I think the first one's Reese Nelson, right?
That was good.
And
That was
yeah, I think Reese looked really good at that right wing. And Reese is kind of the reason why I'm not desperate to go sign out, a Pedro Neto or Takafuso Kubo, right? Or is it
yeah.
Takafusa? I think it's Takafusa Kubo.
Mhm.
I'm not desperate to go get a backup right wing for
Mhm.
Saka at this point in time because I think Nelson can do a good enough job there as long as he's not playing, 5, 10, or like 10 games in a row or something.
Mhm.
So yeah, I thought he looked good. I thought he was threatening. I thought he brought a little bit of that directness to the
Yep.
game, and he played some really dangerous balls into the box. Was kind of unlucky
Mhm.
for none of them to lead to a big chance.
Yep.
And I think also defensively, he was really good. And
True.
people at the beginning of the season were talking about the idea of holding on to Nicola Pepe as a backup for Saka, and
On.
this is exactly why I didn't want to do that. Right, Pepe, sure, Pepe can step onto a field and create chaos and maybe walk away with a goal and an assist, but what Pepe does not do is the defensive side of the game. And Nelson was chasing Said Benrahma back towards his own goal, getting stuck in, putting in the tackle, and winning the ball. And I think that was really impressive on his part. Showed
Yep.
some real grit and determination. So I was really impressed with him. And then the other fringe player I liked a lot was Jakub Kivior.
Mhm.
I think he won a good number of his duels, was pretty confident in possession, looked better on the ball than Gabriel on the day,
Yep.
and generally was more one of the more steadier guys on the field for Arsenal. So, and also just I'm a big fan of Kivior. I want to try to find a way to fit him into this team somehow because
Mhm.
he's got the technical quality, he's got the athleticism, he's got the pace. Again, this guy was breaking Theo Walcott's speed records at
Yeah,
Colney
that's
within two
crazy.
weeks of signing. Right?
Mhm.
Um, yeah, so I think he's a really talented player, and he came on and was one of the more impressive guys on the field for us. But was there anyone who stood out to you?
Yeah, I would agree with you that KVR for me was really good. You also have to consider that he's playing as the right center back, which is, I think, quite unfamiliar. Like, not unfamiliar because he played it last season, but a bit weird for him because he's left footed. But for him to still go up there and put in a decent performance, I think he carried on his good form from the Sheffield match where he played as a left centre back, more natural position for him. I think he carried on from that and showed that he is growing as a player, and I think that's a really underrated signing that the club made. Because on the ball, like, he's so good. He reminds me of a midfielder on the ball who's just scanning and very progressive with his passing as well. So definitely one to keep an eye on his development. And you also mentioned about Kivior's pace. I think Kivior's pace potentially puts him as a contender for that left back spot as well because he can track and runners and he can recover very well. So I'm quite intrigued to see how he develops with us. Very interesting player. Seems like a good character as well. Very composed. So I like those qualities in a defender. And I thought he was the one guy that stood out. Reese Nelson, to a certain extent, yes. I wouldn't say it was incredible, but it was better than the others for sure. And he did the basics of the game quite good. So I agree with you as well that his work rate was great. He was defending very well. Um, off the ball. So that's obviously something Mikel values. And apart from that, no one really stood out to me. I think Fabio Vieira scammed his way to another assist towards the end. The pass to Odegaard. You can't. In fact, I'm going to, as soon as this podcast is over, I'm going to go and check up Fabio Vieira's stats because it seems to me like every other time this guy plays, he's getting an assist. So he's not the flop that people think he is. I think he's played really less. I think the less minutes he has pretty good numbers in terms of his goal contribution. So I would like to see him more. I
I
think, as you mentioned, he could be a contender for LCM spot if you put Tomiyasu there. So yeah, let's see how he progresses with us.
I think right now, yeah, right now Vieira in all competitions has a goal and 3 assists.
That's pretty good for a guy that hardly plays, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Like, of course, his goal was a penalty, but still, like, 4 goal contributions in few minutes, like, it's very hard for players to just impact like that. I don't think everyone is like Trossard. I think Trossard is one of the best impact players around. Like, he gets few
yeah.
minutes and he makes things happen. But somehow Trossard, when he starts matches, doesn't seem to have the same effectiveness. So I think each player is different in terms of when they thrive. And I think Fabio Vieira, to be honest, to be fair with him, has done very well in the limited minutes that he's got. So credit to him. Finally, we've gone through the game, a very depressing game. I just want to get your reaction on us getting knocked out once again out of the Carabobbins Cup, something we've been consistently doing for the past 35 years. It's, I think, an Arsenal DNA, you know. There's this, it's almost like Groundhog Day. Every time in the Carabao Cup we lose, and then someone posts that picture of Wenger smiling when we're losing 3-0 to Sheffield Wednesday. This was back in 2015. Um, how do you see the Sham? Like, I think both of us can agree, and we've gone through it in detail, that the performance was really bad. But what are your feelings about the Carabao Cup and getting knocked out of it? Do you see this as a missed opportunity for us to win some silverware? Or do you think that because we're playing in three competitions, this was probably for the best because we rather target the Champions League and Premier League? Obviously, people have different schools of thought. There are some people who like to label themselves realists. I would say that I come under that umbrella probably. And I just think our squad has too many injuries at the moment. And I don't know how we can play in three competitions without hiccups. And I would rather us give our best in the Premier League and in the Champions League. And I also said this when we were in the Europa League last season, and there was this match. Saliba got injured in the Europa League, and that cost us in the Premier League. So I'm like, come on, like I don't care about the Carabao Cup. Now people are gonna say that, oh, you have not won a trophy in 3 years, but it depends on how big of a trophy you view the Carabao Cup, you know. And people will discount last season's run in as well. But honestly, if you gave me the choice to be in with a shout of a title in April versus just having a Carabao Cup like what uh, that wannabe Pep at United has done, um, I would obviously choose to be in a title race in April. So I'm not personally too fussed about elimination from the Carabao Cup. I think it can happen. It's already happened to City. It's happened to United, and the other team in the Champions League, Newcastle, haven't been so great in the league or in the Champions League. So I think that it has happened. Be angry with the performance, but I don't think personally that getting out of the Carabao Cup is something to lose too much sleep over. How do you see it, Sham?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm kind of nearby on the spectrum, right? I think anyone who is walking out of this saying like no big deal, like I didn't want that trophy anyway, I don't agree with them particularly. But like I said at the beginning, at the top of the pod, if there was a cup competition that I had to go out of in the season, it's the CFL Cup. That being said, I don't want to like scoff at what a small trophy this is. I think at the end of the day, it still counts, right? It's still something that shows up on your Wikipedia page if you win it. But I think the real lesson from this is how difficult it is to challenge on all four fronts over the
Yeah,
course of the season.
yeah.
Because is there really anything that you would have done differently in terms of the lineup? Maybe you play Tomiyasu instead of Zinchenko there, but I mean that's a lot of minutes back to back to back to give him.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe you play Kivior at left back, and then
That's what I would have done.
and then you figure out someone to put in at right center back. I mean, I don't think you could give those minutes to Saliba because
I would have played Declan
he's
Rice at right centre back personally, and or Ben White at right centre back and played Declan Rice as part of the back four. That's what I would have done. Like
actually
it's not ideal.
you know, sorry.
I know it's not
You
ideal that Declan Rice plays in this match because we want to rest him, but I think his fitness is very good and I think he can handle it as opposed to some other players. So maybe using him as part of the back four might have been a solution.
you know what I would have done? I think I would have played Kivior at left back. I would have kept Gabriel in, And I think I would have put um, Ruel Walters in a right center back,
Ooh,
right?
I don't think I would have done that.
And
Can you
I would have
imagine?
put White in.
Can you imagine Antonio playing against him and him making a mistake and all the fans get on his back? Like I
Did
don't.
Antonio play last night?
Did he play?
I don't know. I didn't notice him if he did. Um, I don't know. Let me look actually and see whether he played last night. I can't I can't believe I don't remember that. It feels like I did not hear his name. Yeah, Bowen played striker last night. That's what it was. Um, yeah, I don't know. I think in this situation, this was probably the best match to roll out Walters and give him minutes. You know, it's fairly low stakes. Again, you know, if you have to go out of a competition, the AFL Cup is the one you want to pick for that. But I think it would have been a low stakes situation to give Walters anywhere between 70 to 90 minutes of, you know, top level game time and show him, you know, what that competition requires, right? What you know, what the opposition looks like when you're playing almost a full strength West Ham. And the reason I want Walters to get those minutes is because Timber tore his ACL. There's rumors that he might come back in like January or whatever. We'll see. And then Tomiyasu doesn't seem particularly trusted at right back these days. I'm, you know, maybe Arteta views him more as a left back, as a center back these days. And then Party, again, we've kind of spent months of our lives talking about Party being made of glass. So White really is the only consistent option at right back. And again, Tomiyasu is going to be gone for the Asia Cup in January. Party's going to be gone for the AFCON in January.
Yeah.
Timber, you know, even if he is, you know, practicing again in January, there's no way that guy touches the pitch before February, March. So it's just White who is an option for us for the next few months, really, at right back. And so I think Walters is, you know, kind of in the tier below Winery and Lewis Skelly in terms of talent that we have coming out of the academy. So yeah, Walters is a guy who I want to get minutes into this season wherever I can, kind of the way that City did with Rico Lewis last season, because I think we're going to need a guy who can spell White, and you can't throw him cold into these situations. So I think this match was kind of the perfect testing ground for Walters, so to speak.
Hmm. I'm not sure if I agree with that still. Like, I'll tell you why. Here's the thing. First of all, I don't know. I agree with your logic. I think your logic is spot on. I think we need that player like what Rico Lewis did last season for City to come in and chip in with a few minutes from time to time. Now, I'm not sure if Walters is that good. Like, I know, like, as fans, including myself, we love to hype up all the Haaland players. But even people in the youth, they tell me that he has made quite a few mistakes itself for the youth side. So, like, I don't know. Like I'm a bit skeptical of throwing him in such a game, not just because it might cost Arsenal, but I don't want him to be on the end of some of our fans. I would like a player like Walters to play in preseason. So ideally, he should have played a bit in preseason, should have been eased in, should have made a few sub appearances, and then he plays and makes his debut. I think there's a huge difference between giving Sagoe Jr. a debut at right wing, where his role is more offense oriented. He can just go out there and express himself, versus a role where each and every single thing that you do is going to be scrutinized. And when you can cost your own team a goal, you're scrutinized even more. So I'm just a bit skeptical of playing Walters there. Maybe we could have kept Walters on the bench and maybe brought him on. That I might have got behind. But yeah, I agree with you about on the overarching point, though, that we do
Mhm.
need a player who can come in and probably give us something a bit uh, different and also a bit more depth. I mean, Ben White or someone might be unavailable, because can you imagine yesterday if Ben White was also unavailable? Like, it's crazy. That Timber injury has just destroyed everything, if you honestly ask me. And it's very sad as well because the club invested 40 million on him, and he ideally should uh, be playing these games, but obviously fate had something else in store for him. So hopefully once he's back, though, we can have a much different picture of everything. But until then, we need to find a solution, Sham. And really, the question on my mind is, let's break the season down into chunks.
Sure.
So now we have 2 more months, right? And we have the festive period coming in December. Our objectives, number one, we have to keep pace with Man City or just maintain our position in and around the top of the Premier League. We need to get out of our Champions League group, right? And then
Yeah.
the second phase is January, February, and March, because I see this as a phase where we're playing the FA Cup, we're playing the Champions League, and we're playing the Premier League. This is going to be complicated in January by players missing, like Tomiyasu, who goes to the Asian Cup, and Thomas Partey and others who go to the African Cup of Nations. So we're going to be missing a few players. So my question to you, Sham, is let's let's first look between November and December, and these next 2 months before the January transfer window. What should Arsenal do to make sure we maintain our position? Would you just keep things the way they are, or do you think that this is a bit of a ticking time bomb and we have to change something? And if so, what would you change?
I wouldn't make anything wholesale, but I think Tomiyasu needs to play the important matches, right? Or at least Tomiyasu needs to play in every match in which it is not guaranteed that the team we're up against is just going to sit in their box for 90 minutes and try to hit us on the counter, right? If that's the case, and there's a couple of those matches that we have in the near future, but if that's the case, play Zinchenko. If that's
Mhm.
not the case, Tomiyasu needs to be in that lineup. Also, until Jesus comes back, I think Havertz needs to start a center forward. And Kedia
Yep.
had a really great hat trick at the weekend. He looked excellent, and then he followed that up with a pretty pathetic performance. And that's
Yep.
kind of what you get with Nketiah sometimes. You go one step forward, one step back,
Yeah.
occasionally two
Sorry to
steps
cut you off
forward, and
there.
then you still go one step
Yeah.
back. Sorry?
Sorry to cut you off there, but honestly, I cannot read too much. Sheffield United are horrendously bad, by the way. They have
Yeah.
1 point in like 9 league games. That's so bad. Like, oh my god, like they're in huge trouble. So I cannot take anything that happens in that match seriously. Personally, I just think that yeah,
Yeah.
it's great to win final. Eddie scored some great goals, all that cool. But I cannot read so much into that. And like you
No,
mentioned, yeah,
I agree. They're on track to be probably the worst Premier League side since Derby County in
yeah,
2007, 2008.
yeah.
So yeah, you don't want to take that seriously. But yeah, I
Yeah.
think I would make those two changes. Rice at 6, Odegaard at. It depends when Smith Rowe comes back. Honestly, that's the annoying thing. But
Smith was going to be more weak, so I don't think we can plan with him at all. And I think Arteta is
yeah,
fed up with him, judging by how he
well,
sounds in presses.
then what I think I would do is what I personally would do is Jorginho at the 6, and then Odegaard at left center mid, and then Rice at right center mid. I don't think Arteta is going to do that, but that's personally what I would do. So, from top to bottom, Raya, White, Saliba, Gabriel, Tomiyasu, Jorginho, Rice, Odegaard, Saka, Havertz, Martinelli.
That's
I think
exactly
that
my
is,
team. Yeah.
yeah, I think that's the team I would roll with until Jesus comes back, until Party comes back, maybe until Smith Rowe comes back, and yeah, and obviously, for games like Burnley at home and
Mhm.
Luton Town away, go play Zinchenko there, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Go play Nketiah there, rotate the guys. But I mean, again, like White is the player that I'm really concerned about because let me just read the fixtures that we have. We have Newcastle away, and then we have to go, and then we have to play Sevilla, right? Burnley at home, away at Brentford, home to Lens, home to Wolves, away at Luton, away at Villa, away at PSV, home to Brighton, away at Liverpool, home to West Ham, away at Fulham, and then you hit January.
Oh my god, this is brutal. I don't want to do this.
Like White could possibly have 2,000 minutes in his legs by the
Oh my
time we
god.
hit January. And
Oh my
that's what
god.
I'm worried about. Because pardon my language, if anything happens to Ben White that keeps him out for a significant period of time, we are fucked, right?
Yeah.
We are not doing a goddamn thing this season if he's injured.
No.
And he's not, he's not the only guy in that category, but White is now in that category based on the squad composition.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. So I'm a little concerned, and I hope Arteta gets a little creative and takes the necessary risks, you know, um, to at least keep White in the green fitness
Yeah.
wise until we can actually sign a guy to even on loan, but just to cover some of those minutes for him.
Yeah. No, absolutely. This just is bonkers. 2,000 minutes by January is, oh my god.
Let me see how many minutes he has right now, actually, because I know Rice crossed 1,200 last night, which I think is a lot.
Ben
to,
White.
to, to.
Ben White sofa score.
Now
Great.
my internet is not
does
working.
not. No, it's mine, not yours. Oh, wait, both.
Okay, Ben. Okay, so Rice, I think by my count has I want to say like 1,200 and like 60, 70 something, right? It might be a little under that. White, as of right now, November 2nd, 2023, has 1,324 minutes. And he's probably going to have to play 70 to 80% of the fixtures that I just listed there.
And incredibly physical games as well. Oh my god. I'm okay. I'm actually concerned now. And I think, you know what the worst part is? And this is why I'm so pissed off with Thomas Partey. On a normal day, I would have said, fine, we can play Declan Rice as part of the back four and salvage something. But because this guy is injured, we need to play Declan Rice there. And yeah, it's just crazy, it's just crazy. And I don't know. Like I'm honestly not so optimistic about the Premier League this season. Like I know it might sound ludicrous to say, but I just view us as a ticking time bomb. It does not take a lot for us to lose or drop points in a game. So really concerned about that. But I think Champions League is what we will do well in this season. So fingers crossed we go far in that competition. But hey, fingers crossed we keep our players fit and find some good solutions in the Premier League as well. So yeah, I think that might be a good place to end the podcast. I was too depressed after hearing that Ben White stat. I might have to go and sleep because it's like, oh my god, if he's because if he's injured, I don't even know what we're going to do. Okay, like I don't even know what the
Play a
solution is.
back three. Play back three. That's the only
Not a
option.
wing back. Like every option is just terrible. So yeah.
3-4-3 is what I'd go with. But yeah, no, we'll see. We've put ourselves in a very precarious situation, and I'm not thrilled that we've done that. But it is what it is. I still am optimistic about Newcastle, right? And I still think we'll do pretty well this season, but we're gonna need a couple things to break our way. So fingers crossed.
Yep, absolutely. Fingers crossed. Yep.
Well, we'll go ahead and put a bow on it there. So thank you, listeners, for being here with us. Thank you if you're watching on YouTube for being here with us as well. Shouts to Arsenal Presser for the encouraging comment. Glad to have you here. You can follow me on Shamsdale, on Twitter at Shamsdale. It's been one of those days. You can follow Sash on Twitter at LT Arsenal. You can check out the pod at This Week Arsenal. If you're watching on YouTube, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. We're about 90-ish subscribers out from 2,000. So if you could help us hit that milestone, that'd be great. And we'll be back after hopefully a win at Newcastle, and we'll be looking forward to talking that out with you guys. So until then, stay safe, take care, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.